Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay at home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight, got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet, cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Danny and I are here. We're glad that you're here, and we're just excited to have a conversation tonight with a guest. But before that, talk a little bit about just some life and have a nice, fun conversation about that before we bring our guest on. Danny, you were telling me the day was not so, what's the word I'm looking for? Cooperative for you.
Yeah, just didn't. I had set up today to be pretty much a day off. I had a couple things like, the podcast, what have you, that I just needed to do. But I had arranged it so that basically at about noon on until the podcast, I didn't have anything to do. I didn't have any responsibilities. I had everybody arranged. Everybody was going where they needed to go. And it was just, I don't know. I was running late. I went to the grocery store and had to grab, because I was just going to grab dinner for tonight because it's the first of the month, really the almost first of the month. So we get paid once a month. So we're kind of out of groceries by the end of the month. So I just run over and grab some dinner, made Korean beef and rice and broccoli, and it was amazing. One of my family's favorite meals. So cool. Went over and got that, and I didn't have time. I needed to get back to the house really by noon for everything to go. And the first time ever since I moved here, really, I had 3 different people at the grocery store that wanted to talk.
Oh, no.
That just wanted to start up a conversation. And I like conversations. I want that, but it was everything from the new Apple variety that they have recently come out with, Sugar Bee. And then it was another guy about how the Sugar Bee came to be, like what,
Oh, wow.
It was a Honeycrisp, which was developed in Minnesota. And Honeycrisp is a fantastic apple, very just like I like it. And the Sugar Bee basically is a bee cross-pollinated some of the Honeycrisp, but they don't know with what. And so now they just have this offshoot that I guess they're just, cutting the branch and putting it on a new tree, all like they do. And I bet I spent 35 minutes at the store talking
to an Apple ambassador.
I guess. Yeah. He was just very happy about it. And I'm like, I love to hear people talk about their passion, and nobody here talks. There are a few people, but everybody's very reserved,
So you met Johnny Appleseed incarnate is what I...
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
And I loved it because I love learning about that kind of stuff anyway. And I love bees. Right. I love honeybees. So, but yeah, so I went, okay, that's fine. I'm going to be about a half hour off schedule. Not a big deal. I still can get everything done that I need to get done. So rushed home, and immediately things just, I had a book review that I'm trying to write that I wanted to get out by March 1st for Robbie Samuels. He's got his new book coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And he wanted to get a book review. And I still have time tonight. I guess I could get it out before March 1st, but we'll see. And then one of my kids, the school called, my middle schooler, and said he's not feeling well. So I went and got him. I'm like, okay, well, I'll come get him. That's what we do. That's why I'm here. And I bring him. I'm on the way home, and I'm like, are you feeling sick? And he said, no. Not really. I'm just coughing. And he's got a lingering cough from a cold.
Yeah.
And we actually, to make Marnie feel better, basically, I took him to the doctor. Just let me, let's make sure it's nothing. And really you don't know with kids. And if you have the ability, and we happen to have insurance. So yeah. And nothing wrong with him. The doctor said, yeah, it's what you thought. It's just lingering from a cold. Well, they sent him home because he was coughing so much. And I'm like, so your throat's fine? He's like, yeah, I don't feel bad. I just can't stop coughing. And we know it's just basically just keep, drinking water and take Mucinex. And It'll be fine. But the school didn't want to risk him being there, kind of. I'm like, okay, fine. And that's no problem. I'll bring him home. Get him home, finally get everything out. And then the dog starts screaming, basically, just in pain. And I'm like, what is going on? I finally sat down on my computer to write something, and I run back upstairs, and she's just wailing for nothing, and I don't know if it was an internal thing, or she does have pneumonia or is getting over pneumonia. So I don't know. And I'm like, man, it is. And by then it was 2:00 already. And I'm like, do I have to take the dog to the vet? What's going on? And it was just one thing after another. And then one of my kids gets home, my elementary school kids, and the other one doesn't. And I'm like, where's your sister? And he said, oh, she wasn't on the bus, Dad. I think she missed the bus.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, oh man, come on. So I run over to the school because that's what you do, I thought. But no, they realized that she wasn't on the bus, and the bus went back and got her and picked her up and brought her home probably half hour later. I mean, she's definitely later than normal.
Wow.
Like, man, come on. And then the thing is your kids will do this a lot. So my 10-year-old wants to learn how to cook. Cool.
Yeah.
And he thinks I'm a great cook. I'm not. I can cook some stuff, but I know more than he does, right? And so I'm trying to get dinner ready fast because I've got to get back down here and write this thing. I got 3 different things I'm supposed to write today. Didn't get any of them done. And he comes in, he's like, Dad, can you teach me how to cook Korean beef? In my mind, I'm like, no, damn it, I got to go. And of course you can't do that. You've got to just suck it up, I guess is the best way to put it. You're like, no, you're right, buddy. I'll be happy to show you how to cook this. And yeah. So it's been a day for sure.
Yeah,
but
it sounds like it. Sounds like you were given a batch of bad apples. Sorry.
Nah, that's okay. You definitely got to the core of the situation.
I did. Yeah, and you were in quite a sticky situation. You had to get out of there talking about, honeybees and everything. So
sometimes that's the way it be.
Oh golly, yeah, we could go on and on about this. Well, to go along with that, we have a special guest tonight. And honestly, I think we've had other people, I think, connected with Fathering Together on the podcast before.
Yep.
So we've got
Brian Anderson.
That's right. Yep.
Mainly.
I think that's the main one that we've had. But we've been growing a relationship with Fathering Together. The organization has, and it's been really great just to be able to build that up. And so I'm excited tonight to have a new person from their organization on, and it sounds like we're gonna have some fun conversation about late stage teens. So kind of maybe in the era that you're in a little bit. I'm not really in that spot, but I think we're going to be talking about that and basically his involvement with a program involving dads going into the schools and being a part of that. And so I'm excited about, because that's something that I've done. And I know there are other dads who have asked about that, how they can get involved with their kids' schools and stuff. And so I think that our guest will have a lot to talk about to get people involved with that. But yeah, it's just going to be a fun conversation to just and see where it goes from there. Really, you know how it is. It's always laid back, man. Nothing too crazy. So, but yeah. So we'll be back here just a little bit with our guest. Become a member of the National At-Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support, connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At-Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At-Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for listening in on our fun commercial. Hopefully, if you have been listening long enough, either you've become a member of the organization or maybe that commercial convinced you to do that. So we'd love to have you. But as we said, we have a guest with us tonight. And like always, I forget to ask how to pronounce their last name. So that's always fun. So we'll see how this plays out. And I'm sure I will not do it right, but we're going to try. So with us tonight from Fathering Together, we have John Badalament. Did I say it right?
Put an I on the end and see how that sounds. Try it with the I.
Battlementy? Battle. I don't know. I don't know.
That's been my theory. I've been saying that for years. I'm like, if you just put the I on the end, that'll tell you where to put the I. It's Badalament. So my theory was put the I, you put Badalamenti, but I guess that's not really.
I don't know. My brain's not functioning well enough to figure that out tonight. That's all good. It's
a tough one.
All right. Well, John Badalament is with us tonight from Fathering Together.
Close enough. We just call him John.
Remember
John, good to meet you, John. Glad you're here, John.
Badalament, bad element. Excuse me.
Bad element. There you go. Yeah, that's
Bada. That's
John's a bad element.
I'm not. Yeah, that one's not my favorite. Badeli.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. JB. We'll stick with that.
JB. All right, that works. That works.
Yeah.
Well, hey, John, thanks for coming on the show and enduring that wretched introduction. But no, I mean, we were telling everybody, the organization National At-Home Dad Network has been growing a relationship with Fathering Together over the past few years. We were lucky enough to have gotten to meet Brian Anderson, have him actually be a presenter at Home Dad Con, and really just that kind of continued to make things grow to the point where we've had the opportunity of getting to meet other guys. And I've met some of them also through the Dad 2.0 Summit, David Stanley and Christopher Lewis, guys like that. So happy to have you on the show. I'm curious. I've never met you. Danny and you have seemed to have talked a bit. And of course, our listeners don't know anything about you. So tell us a little bit about who you are, how many kids you got, all that fun stuff.
Yep. Just the bio, the stats. Let's see. I'm John Badalament. Danny and I have met in over Zoom, which is, one of those crazy things where you mentioned Brian Anderson. So I work with Fathering Together as the director of training and education. And we're going on 2 years now. I hope it's 2 in April, May, my working there. And for almost, I'd say the first year, I never met Brian. You mentioned Brian Anderson, and I just, knew him from lots and lots of meetings. And I'm sure everybody's had this experience where you finally meet and you're like, oh. I mean, it was actually Brian sort of fit. He fit. He fit pretty much what I expected. It's just a very strange thing. So that. I've been with Fathering Together for the last couple of years. I have barely two teenagers. My 19-year-old daughter in April will turn 20. So that sort of complicates, things. Now I got to use young adult. Can't just put 2 teens. And the other one, my son, just turned 18 2 days ago, 3 days ago on the 25th. And he, for his 18th birthday, got the most wretched stomach bug that's apparently been ravaging the country. He got it full on. But I admire, he pushed through, which probably extended it for a couple of days, but went out, and tried his best to celebrate the big 18, which is a kind of a strange, it's big, but it's a strange one. Because in my mind, I'm like, in the eyes of the law, for most your 17th year, you're still 18. It doesn't matter. You're going to be an adult if something goes wrong. Yeah. But there's, it's a strange, I think it's a milestone, but really not quite as big as like 16 where you get your license, and not big as 21 for,
it's an awkward milestone. That's for sure.
Well said. Yeah. Awkward milestone. So I am, this one's, I don't know I never know what the right words are, because I'm divorced from them. I'm not with their mother. I'm divorced, yet I'm partnered, which again creates all kinds of wordy situations. And I don't love the identification as like, I'm a divorced dad. Like that doesn't feel great. I'm also not a single dad. In some senses, I am a single dad in that, I've, over the last few years or 5 years, I've had my kids half time. So we split, custody, living right now in the same small town. So north of Boston, but, single dad. Yeah. Cause I'm doing it, that on my own, but I'm also I'm partnered in a relationship with a woman who has 3 kids of her own, 2 teens and 1 young adult. So anyway, that's sort of my living situation, if you will. But it does create lots of, identity questions, like what do I identify as? And I guess I'm just a dad, with kids that are getting older and big transitions. So
big transitions.
Yeah. It's really, and I don't know if it's probably not obvious, but I'm actually I'm in my son's room to do the podcast, because we have a big sort of open space out there. And he was like, he doesn't love being in his room that much to my chagrin, because I'm like, you have a space, you can use it. You would prefer to stretch out all over the house or the apartment. But I'm in his room, and you can see his art behind me, which that's been a really important part of his life. And I'd say as a dad, something that's been something we've shared or bonded through art, and not necessarily just painting. There's music here. He's sort of an artist through and through, does different mediums. So that's me. I mean, stop me or I'll keep going.
No, that's cool. No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing all that. Definitely. I like the art. Actually, it's really cool.
It's cool. Yeah. I'm tempted to do a little tour, but I won't.
You'll
see
okay.
Swear words and all kinds of stuff. It kind of got a little Basquiat feel this phase.
Hey, that's all good. So, like you said, you've got a. I don't know that term either.
I don't know that.
I know. I said that, I realized I'm like, they're not really. That term. They're not.
No, that does not. Sorry,
Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Right over my head.
No, he was a street artist. He's dead. He was a young, very, you probably know him, street artist in New York. That his work has gotten, all sorts of press and really, like a lot of art, just crazy prices for his work. But he was mainly a street artist. Started, I think, graffiti. But anyway, you've seen this one, right?
Yeah, I have seen that.
Seen that.
It's like that. Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah, that's about as deep as it goes.
It's all good.
We're mostly an audio medium here. Most people are not going to watch the video just so they can listen to it. So I'm just going to say that because we're talking about the art, and I just want to tell everybody, if you want to see it, you need to go watch the video.
That's right.
But
They'll have to figure that
but
part
but
out.
you know, I know there are people in our audience that know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah,
They know
yeah.
and they're sitting there going, Brock, Danny, what are you guys, idiots? Why do you not know this? I don't know for Brock's case, but I'm old. I'm just going to use that as my carte blanche today to be,
That's
you
fair.
know,
I like
too old
sports. I like sports ball.
yeah, yeah.
We can talk sports, though. I'm less. Yeah, well, looking for those viewers or listeners. Basquiat, we'll go from there.
Someone's
but he does lots.
Someone's gonna Google it. It'll be okay. Somebody will
Lots
Google
of artwork,
it.
And I do like that it
yeah.
came from the street, from a street art and graffiti, I'm assuming, and that kind of, I don't know if graffiti is a bad word for, you know, artists that are in that medium, but I like, because we have like trains that go by and they're from all over the nation. Of course, these cars go everywhere.
Yeah.
And the graffiti is just beautiful. Sometimes it's just a tag, you know, it's just, but even that is stylized and well thought out.
Right.
Every time I stop with the kids, I'm like, look at that. That's amazing artwork. And my oldest kind of was artistic and is kind of going more for computers now. So he's not really as interested in it. And he looks at me and goes, Dad, that's graffiti, you know? And I'm like, what's the difference? What? I'm the old person here.
Yeah,
you should be accepting of these new mediums, kid. I'm supposed to be stuck in the mud here. Like, no, that ain't art. You ain't putting no painting up and ain't no canvas.
There you know,
but it's
reversal.
really cool stuff. And and he didn't get it, but I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, it's been a huge, and I won't go too deep into it, but it's art and sports have been kind of lifesavers for my son in particular. He's also a boxer, which
cool.
All right, we're mostly audio, but yeah, it's kind of it's an interesting blend of expression, you know, and that at the core is what I mean, really, not to as a dad, really all of my work. And I've been working in this field, which I never really got to in the bio for, I don't know, I guess over 25, was it 25 years, if you count being a teacher and a dean of students, closer to 30, but specifically fatherhood for last 25 years. One of the main themes of my own experience and of, you know, talking to other dads and sort of, you know, putting together, I've written a couple books, done a number of documentaries and short video pieces. One of the main themes that's always been that really came from listening to other dads and reading and research is the importance of knowing who your kid is and following their interest. And that doesn't sound very profound, but I think it's a practice, and it's if you think about it, it takes, you know, to know somebody, you gotta listen, first of all, which is very hard, just a very difficult, clearly, thing to do. You gotta pay attention. You gotta be there. You know, all these really what we call emotional intelligence skills come to bear. But that's been one of my sort of core beliefs is it's important to know your kids, you know, to know who they are, what moves them, and the most challenging part is it changes, you know, like you're just saying your son, you know, was more, you know, into art. Now it's more computers. It's like that train can take, you know, pass through the station sometimes and you don't even notice if you're not tuned in, to use the train analogy.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. Well, I love too that your son has an artist and then boxing and probably in music and what have you.
Yeah.
And, you know, growing up, I think we've all heard the phrase, you can be anything you want. You can be anything you want. And that's great in itself. But the thing that I picked up on with my kids is it doesn't have to be one thing. Because all my life growing up, it was like, well, you know, what are you going to be? What's your one thing you're going to be? And I love everything. I have so many different interests and so many things that I want to go play with for a little while. I also have ADHD, so it's kind of part of that. But, you know, I want to do all the things. And the ability to look at our kids and say, yeah, I will encourage you. I will help you find that spot, that thing that you're interested in, whether it is sports or art or boxing or whatever you're into, music.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you can be all of them, you know?
Yeah. You don't even, I love that. I mean, you can be all of them. You can, it's, we try to put labels and like box, that's sort of, okay, you're going to be an artist, even, these terms, you're going to be an artist, like, and it's okay. Names and labels are important, but I think that's it's so important because there is such a push, especially when you get into masculinity and sort of these forces that I think, at least growing up for me, we're like, what are you going to do? How are you going to provide? Which is important, figuring out what your work is, and what was it? Follow your interest? No, not follow your interest. No. It was follow your effort. I follow your effort, like where, and that's part of this. I think, like you're saying, with you and your kids have all different interests. Where do they, what do they gravitate to? What are their, what do they put their efforts towards?
Yeah.
And because you never know, it's like you just never know what's gonna, sure. I would be lying if I said there weren't times, and even times now, I'm like, he'll be this, like he'll be a musician, and very, and then it gets into like what success is. But I try to keep that at bay and be like, right now, and he's actually been helpful in that because he switches things usually pretty quickly. And it's like he's painting one day, and then painting just took a back seat, and then it was music, and sometimes it's both. So it really is, I think, as a dad from a young age, the more we can tune into what their effort, what they're interested in, and not try to box them in, like, okay, because that's what happens, right? Like, he's a good I mean, we can see it. Sports is the best example. Like, a really good soccer player, get him into the club soccer racket, $3,000 a year or whatever.
It is a racket.
So that is I think it's important to try to keep those sort of our own dreams and fancies and unrealized dreams at bay.
And you mentioned, for the past 20 some years, you've been involved with the schools and doing stuff with that, and your kids are getting ready to kind of like transition completely out of school. Type of deal. One of the things that you've been involved with is a program through Fathering Together in like the elementary school programs called Dads in Schools. And I know, like, at the school that my kids go to, they go to a private school. They've really switched up on making sure that trying to get dads involved in different ways with the school. And it's been really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, just everything from like, hey, bringing dads in to do projects to, every once in a while they're doing dads with donuts, or, it's a Christian school. So it's like, hey, come in and, do prayer in the morning kind of deal. And just really trying to get the dads involved in different ways. And it's been really interesting, but I know that's not the case in all schools. And Danny
but that's awesome.
Yeah. And so Danny and I, we've heard lots of conversations through, Facebook and Discord of dads asking, like, how do you volunteer at your school, or how do you get involved? Because it seems like there's such a barrier for it. Like it's all about like moms being a part of the classrooms and all these different things. And I'm curious, like, what was it like for you to get things going? How did you get involved in the program that Fathering Together's started with the schools?
Yeah, that's great. I was just going to ask you, I'm curious if I'll answer your question. Do they name dads specifically though? Because that's like, do they call it? I mean, dads with donuts, that's pretty standard. But like when you say they will name, they'll say that, try, you know what I mean? Do they name dads, father figures, or whatever?
Oh yeah, I forget the exact name of it, but it's like, it's dads on campus. That's what it's called.
Oh, cool.
And they've got their own logo for things and stuff. They've really, like, I think like the first year when my kids started going there, like they actually had like t-shirts that you could buy to like wear on campus, which was really
Yeah.
neat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
That's
because it's
great.
a uniform school, so they tried to get like a t-shirt together to kind of, you know, band everybody together when they were on campus doing something,
And
which was really neat.
identify the scary men walking around the campus. That's
Right.
Actually, I love it. I
Right.
love
there's
it.
some
You know,
truth to that.
well, what's really cool though, like I mean, I would go in. I did lunch duty actually for quite a while up until I got this new job, and it was always fun to go in and do lunch duty with everybody else. Like usually the boys, especially, I'd go sit down at a table with them and talk and stuff and just have a great time. Like there was another dad who he would always for May the 4th would come in dressed as like the Mandalorian or Boba
Right.
Fett or something like that at
Yeah.
that time.
May the
Uh,
fourth be with you.
you know,
I would
so
do that every day if I could.
yeah, right. I mean,
If I
why
had that
not?
armor, these guys that spend all that money and get that armor, or they make it themselves and whatever. Like I would wear
Yeah.
that every day. I would show up. The mail would show up, and I'd be at my door going, "Hey,
That's a good
where my
question.
Mandalorian armor? Have you seen it?"
this past weekend we had our daddy daughter dance, and it was awesome because it was themed after the Seussical, so it was all Dr. Seuss stuff. So like
All
Oh,
right.
nice.
the
Yeah.
dads are coming in, you know, like bright colors and all kinds of different things like that. One guy came dressed as the Grinch in
The
a
Grinch.
suit, in like a suit
Oh,
though,
man.
with his daughter
Yeah.
who was Cindy Lou Who. It was awesome.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
great, man.
It-
Kudos
was
to
Wow.
that guy.
So the, you know, our school is definitely an outside of the box compared to some other schools, but yeah.
Yeah.
What has it been like, or what was it like to
Yeah.
kind of get involved with this program?
Well, yeah, thank you. I mean, that's great. I found that a lot. So when I started doing this work, um, I made a documentary film called All Men Are Sons, exploring the legacy of fatherhood in the late 90s, aired on PBS in like 2002, 2000, a few years after that. But that I wasn't even a dad when I made that film, but one of the one of the funders that I found was the International Coalition of Boys Schools, IB, International IC Coalition, ICBS.
Yeah,
There
no,
you
you
go.
got me.
Yeah, and which is a great organization, and I've been in touch with them ever since. But one of the things they said, the film was about 5 men exploring their own relationship with their dad and sort of how that played out in their lives. And we had one guy was 17 years old, and the others were in their late 20s, early 30s, and all very different backgrounds. One guy became a dad in the process of the film, which is where I learned that was one of my first big lessons in fatherhood, because I actually built relationships with these people over time, and asked him if he would call me when they went to the hospital, and he did at like 3 a.m, and I got the camera, and I was in the back of the car holding a bucket in one hand, the camera in the other hand, so I got up close. But anyway, the film really gave in the Boys School Coalition insisted that, they said, as part of this, we want you to show the film at a couple of conferences, two big educational conferences, their own conference and a couple others. And this is early 2000s, like I said, like 2002, 3. And I showed the film, and there were pretty good sized rooms, lots of what turned out to be heads of school and principals and vice principals. And basically, after I showed this short piece and sort of put a presentation together, there were all these schools coming up to me saying, "Hey, would you come and talk to our dads?" So this is like, again, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it started. And I was, a little sort of light bulb went off in my head. I was like, yeah, because at that point I was an educator. I had a master's in education. I had been teaching. And then this creative pursuit sort of took over. Back to our original sort of point, you don't have to be one thing. And so I started going to schools and speaking with the film and talking to dads. And then somewhere 2003, I became a dad. My daughter was born, which, upped my credibility enormously, because I would go to schools and talk to, auditoriums filled with dads. And there'd always be the hand that would go up. And I'm like, here it comes. Here it comes. So how many kids do you have?
Mm-hmm.
And I initially was like, I was pretty green, and I would like, it came with usually a little like in parentheses. And so, what do you really know about this?
Yeah.
And I learned not to take the bait so much. And anyway, and becoming a dad and continuing to show the film. I even show it to this day, clips of it, and writing after that. But that was the beginning of my involvement in schools. And I still think 20 years later, as we put together this program with Fathering Together, the model has evolved, but some of the core principles have stayed the same, which is, I believe dads want to get involved in their kids' lives. I think schools, whether they're, independent schools, parochial, public schools, charter schools, even, homeschooling communities, schools are a great place to engage dads. I've always felt that's been true. And having seen over these last 20 years, even, back then, it was, in some ways, I feel like we've come a long way. And then in other ways, I'm like, why is this still a new concept? It's 2023. I could show you a flyer from 2003 where it was like, engaging dads in schools, or what is it? Why dads matter to their kids, like putting the title. That's why I asked you, Brock, about the title.
Yeah.
Back then, putting the word dad, father figure. And I always try to use the, as inclusive language as possible, because that, I've had moms show up to my dad-son breakfasts or dad-kid dinner. And if that's who identifies as dad, that's fine, But the point being that it really, a lot has changed in that I believe men are making our way to being more involved at home, more engaged in the caretaking, if you will, and that school is just a natural place because dads care, like parents care about their kids' education. And they, like you said, you get a lot of questions like, how do I get involved? It's what I call the two-way street of dads and schools, a two-way street of engagement. Schools do need to make changes. And I've worked with, faculty and PTAs, PTOs, parent associations since the very beginning to say, hey, you need to really look at this. It's really a diversity. It's an equity issue. I mean, you can make a case that it's diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, because you have a group of constituents, dads that are parents, that are not as engaged as moms. And you just look at your parent organization in your school to get a barometer of how involved dads are. That doesn't mean because they're not on the PTA or PTO that they're not involved, but by and large, schools have not done a great job of addressing this inequity. But the two-way street, that's one way, is the school has to be aware that they're missing out on this great resource. They're missing out on Brock at lunch. They're missing out on Danny reading to the kids, which I don't have to tell you, for any dad who's gone in and volunteered and got to go into the classrooms or, on the school, it's what could be better? It's a blast, no matter what you're doing, because you get to immerse yourself for a little time in your kid's life. And it doesn't always have to be with your kid. In fact, I think it's great when you can go, and we did a program where we read to other kids. You don't just go in for your kid. It's a community of dads. Mm-hmm. So I think the other part of that is, so the school has to recognize and do something about that that imbalance, that inequity, and engage, reach out to dads. And the other side of the equation is dads have to, it's not that complicated. We have to step up. I want to volunteer. Okay, you want to volunteer. What's the first thing you could do? Who could you contact? Like, and I don't mean to belittle it, because there are forces at play. Historically, dads have, not done, in recent history anyways, that been as involved in the schools. There's the time I showed up at my kid's preschool, which is where this model started. I went to the parent organization. There were like 19 moms sitting in these tiny little seats. And I was like, I'm going to break the chair. Like, that was, and that moment of like, oh my, they're looking at me like, what are you doing here? And at the same time, like, oh, great. Like a dad who speaks for all dads, which I found a weird experience.
Yeah, you find out. Yeah, you kind of get this like, oh, you're the spokesperson. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
What do dads think? You're like, well, I don't know.
Right.
I feel.
I don't know.
That,
I know what I think.
Yeah, I definitely feel that and understand that. I think ever since I went to my first Dad 2.0 and came back with like all this fire to like really just shine fatherhood out there, like starting a podcast and all that stuff. And you go to people and you're like, what do you do? And it's like, well, I'm a stay-at-home dad and I have this podcast. Oh, you have a podcast? What's it about? It's like, it's about fatherhood. Oh, tell me all about it. And it's like, you're like, oh my gosh. Like, and then you get kind of thrown into that pigeonhole of things. But
yeah,
I think too, like you were talking about just the fact of how like it's a two-way street. And I feel like on the one side, on the school side, like schools just need to be more welcoming to dads. And on the other side, dads need to just basically be like, if I want to do this, okay, I need to go. I need to go do it. And I think a lot of times dads just, if that's what you're like, I want to get involved, go get involved. Like,
right.
Don't sit there and wait for somebody to invite you to do it. Like, you kind of sometimes have to sort of break through the paper wall or whatever it is.
Right.
Be the Kool-Aid man. Oh yeah. And like, I'm going to do this. I don't know.
Right. And I think that's true. And it's a lot. And to get to the fathering together and the model I mentioned, which again has been 20 years in the making, organizing is a good way to go. And it is like, Brock, at your kid's school, that having some, named organization that addresses dad's father figures directly, and not, because the word parent and the word family, like it's still in an educational context refers to or is associated with mom. And I think like any imbalance, or when you have a group that's not addressed, you have to name that. So the model we've created, have been working on, and are piloting, is based on, it's ideal if it's part of the parent PTO or PTA, that we call it a dad chapter, could be a task force, a committee, but ideally the dad leader becomes part of that group, at the very least communicates with that group, because there's no better way to get off on the wrong foot than create a sort of separate entity that doesn't communicate, or there's just too much in schools, too much miscommunication and scheduling issues that have to be addressed. So the model is that the dad or two dads become part of the parent organization, or like I think Brock at your kid's school, its own chapter organization that communicates, which is what I did with my kids. They went to a Montessori charter school, K-8. And I would attend the PTA or the parent association meetings, and it helped a lot, because, and the goal, there's three parts of the mission of these chapters. One is to connect dads with their kids, not just their own kids, and families. Two, to connect dads with other dads, other parents, other moms. And three, to connect dads with the school and the community. So those sort of three buckets are where, all the activities and events that we, offer or encourage schools to think about, or dads to think about. They have to kind of fit one of those buckets. That's the idea. It's really, the model allows for local flavor, if you will. So whatever you think, the school thinks, the dads, the PTA thinks is a good idea for a dad kid activity or event, becomes what you do. For a community, it might be or for the school, it could be dads organizing a yearly pancake breakfast and putting it together for the whole community. We did just simple things, dads and kids hiking. We brought in a speaker for dads and moms to have a night, and there'd be childcare. So that's the idea, is to create a sub organization, a group, a chapter within the existing structure of the school. That's explicit task is to provide opportunities for dads to engage in these ways.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
it's a lot of fun, and doesn't have to be like every event is for everybody. It's like, I had one guy say, hey, we want to do a dad's read thing. Cool, let's talk to the teacher. And they set up time for dads to come in and read. And I want to emphasize this too: the more dads that are there, because a lot of times there's pushback saying, what about kids who don't have dads? Which is a fair concern.
Yeah.
The part of this is, it is about a community of dads, and it's giving kids real different versions of men, and what it means to be a man, what it means to be a dad.
Yes.
that for any activity, any event, we always make it explicit, like there are other dads that will be responsible, that will be there for kids. And there's always coaches, uncles, and bringing siblings or bringing a friend. It can be very fluid, but I think that's important, because it drives me kind of crazy when it's like, well, what about the kids don't? Well, so should we not address this entire swath of the population? And I understand.
Right.
I mean, I went to the Pinewood Derby or it's actually my brother, without his dad, and the wheels fell off as it was going down the track. Tragic scene.
Yeah.
I've been there. So
Still
I
funny, but
understand
tragic.
It's totally still funny now, many years later, but the wheels literally came off, and there was no dad to pick them up. So, it's important to be sensitive to that, because we do have, more than ever, ironically, dads involved, but also more than ever dads that are not in the picture, and kids growing up in homes without a dad. So,
Yeah, no, definitely.
yeah.
I was thinking about the fact that, some of the dads that we have had, get involved with the different things, like Brett Landry. I remember him sending in a picture, showed like a group of dads who they are pretty much the ringleaders for carpool pickup and things like that. And just how they kind of go about, organizing that. I thought that was really cool. We actually had them in a newsletter piece that, because they ended up getting on, like, they ended up getting in like the newspaper or something there locally.
Yeah.
About it. It was really cool.
Yeah,
like,
that's cool. And it's, what's that?
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, because you just reminded me, it's the often unspoken thing is, and why we focus too on elementary school is because that's when, now to talk about the changes, now seeing dads in the drop off and the pickup line, and we see dads way more than we did 20 years ago. They're visible now. Are they just sort of drop off, or do they just come to the doorstep, or are they being engaged and brought in? That's another question. But a lot of this is also about which guys don't often won't necessarily admit it or say anything, but it's a great way to meet other dads and foster and build friendships. I mean, I am to this day very close with a bunch of the guys from the where we started when my kids were in pre-K. We're talking years and years, and that those friendships are just great. And I think that's another sort of, I'll say, I guess, a secondary gain. It's pretty primary. It's just giving, because we know as we get older, guys have struggled to maintain friendships and to get out. And this is another, way to do that and find other dads and other moms that are,
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that the school that we go to as well is really neat, is that they have an every Saturday morning just like pickup basketball game for dads to
awesome.
go to.
That's great.
And it's fun. Like I'd gone for a while before I'd had my shoulder surgery, and just played a few times. It wasn't because of that. It wasn't because of that.
Oh yeah, I was waiting for that. I was like, how long before one of us talks about an injury?
No, that injury was due to something completely different. But
okay.
But anyway, no, like I was going to that in the mornings, and it was great because like there'd be like 10, 15 dads there, and just get together. Nobody was trying to like, outdo somebody else. It was just
not too competitive.
No, not
really?
too competitive.
Yeah,
nobody was trying to like, sprint up and down and show off their high school skills or anything like that. It was well paced, but
that's nice. That's
just stuff
rare.
like that. Just like, stuff like that's great.
Yeah.
Our dads actually get involved with a community service project that the school does every year, and they're the ones that are lining up like, hey, we got to get like these things together, and we're going to put these groups together, and we go out all around the neighborhood and help out and stuff.
Awesome.
And it's all led by the dads, which is really fun. And I've gotten to take part of that a couple different times. So yeah, I mean, there are so many different ways for dads to get involved. I am curious, like, so through Fathering Together and what you're doing, like, do you have like a resource page that kind of gives some like tangible steps for a dad to be able to use to, go to the school or whatever, and be like, hey, like, I want to try doing this, and I got this information from Fathering Together or whatever to kind of make that happen?
Yeah, right now we're building that. I would say the best. So we've got a bunch of pilot schools. So this year we're piloting the program. The best thing to do would be to email me, because I'm working with, if you're interested in starting a chapter, becoming part of the pilot, or just want a few ideas or some, activities, or to have a conversation. That's probably the best thing to do, is John, John, at fatheringtogether.org. John. No, see, my other emails are J Badalament, which is just
whatever. Yeah,
I have your Fathering Together email, so I'll make sure it gets in the show notes.
John at fatheringtogether.org. Because we haven't, we're in the process of putting together. I'm actually writing, as probably after we hang up, working on the starter guide, which is really putting everything in one place, in one cookbook. But like I said, I'm always happy to have a conversation, have ideas, and the model's pretty, I think it's pretty simple. Our job is to help you make it work as a dad, including, having conversations with the principal, making sure, giving some, one pagers, like, here's what the research says. And there is some good research. There needs to be more, but, and then just activities and one-offs. I mean, you mentioned service is always a big one. In any school, whether it's independent or public, any principal is going to have a list of things. I remember the preschool, which was private, and it was not cheap. They had a list. There were co-heads, and they gave us this list, and it was like, repair this railing, and there was like kind of a jagged edge on this railing that was a big safety issue, and like they couldn't get it done, and we did a fix it day, and put some joke about no power tools. but one dude showed up and was a welder, and like that was what he did, and he
Nice.
fixed it, so that kind of like really useful.
Yeah.
Again, every school has a million things they need done, and it could be those are easy, like easy things to do. And I just love the diversity of like, we have one group of dads that wanted to get their daughters into STEM, and so we lined up a few moms that were easy to do. Like one mom was a doctor, one mom worked at Google in Boston, and the dads and daughters went to visit and see what do women do in the STEM fields. And
cool.
it wasn't that complicated.
Yeah.
It was pretty easy. And I like the idea of like small things that are different and unique. It doesn't have to be, the pancake breakfast, I think, is a great, like, it can become a tradition. The dads do the pancake breakfast, and building those traditions in is great. So yeah, that's the best way, is to let us know. Cause I feel like you guys you probably have a better sense of this, especially with stay-at-home dads. Like there's so many resources, so many guys have so much to offer, and figuring out how to do it. It isn't, we kind of made light of it. It's not always that clear, and it's not always that welcoming. And there's again, one of the things that doesn't get discussed as much is like, yeah, dads can be looked at, some for good reason, as suspect. Like, why do you want to be involved? But that is incumbent upon us to change that, to change that mindset, and to say we want to be involved with our kids, and we want to be involved in helping the school, and making an effort to do that. I think the time is right. I've been, like I said, doing this for so long. It's now like I feel like there's this, this almost like a backup. There's guys that are ready and want to be involved and want to be part of something. So we're trying to, there are other options too. There's watchdog dads. There's there's not that many actually, but organizations that are
like national.
Yeah, but watchdogs.
There's not a lot of them. Yeah,
No, there's not.
But like you said, there's so much. It's an open field.
It's an open field, and there's so much energy. Yeah,
we've been and we make jokes a lot of times as at-home dads about the playground. Going to the playground, and I made this joke probably 100 times, but the first time I went to the playground, and I had 3 kids with me. And I swear one of the moms was looking at me like, and I'm thinking, lady, I'm not going to take your kids. I brought my own kids. What am I going to do? You can have one of mine, man. Come on. And it was a funny thing, right? But the reality of it is it was strange for the moms there to see a dad. And
yeah,
I've got, I'm fairly personable. I'm definitely extroverted and like to talk to people. So, we got that going for me. But even if you're not, even if you're just, you don't talk to anybody, and you're kind of the weirdo at the playground, but you brought your kid's playing, you're fathering, you're parenting your kid. And then you take your kid with you, and, and everything's great. And then you come back. And like every Tuesday you do this thing, and you're there. And the more you see a dad doing these things, the more we look at it and go, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. He's just a guy with his kids. What do you think? He's not a predator. He's just here his kids need to run around. Come on. And it's the same thing with like the PTO. We've heard the story a lot of times about the first dad that's ever been on the PTO kind of thing. And I'm sure there may have been others previously, but it's always that, hi. And it either goes, well, we don't need anything heavy moved right now.
Yeah.
Which is a big one. So, or, well, do you want to be the president? Do you want to take charge of everything? And whether that's a positive or negative on their part for saying that. And the reality of it is we just want to be there with our kids and be, like you said, build that community of fathers and mothers that are there to be a part of their kids' lives in what is the majority of their day.
Right. The majority of their life, their early life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And there's good reason for all. I mean, it should be said, like, there's good reason for all. These are major, shifts in societal shifts. And, that's why I call it sort of the undiscussable, which is like, what is it like to engage if most of the teachers in elementary school, vast majority are female, part of the work I do with teachers and social workers and is to get them in touch with like, well, what comes up for you? What comes up around men? Because let's face it, we have, as men, there are, some good reason that there's question. And, like anything new, it's like women going into the workplace, that took a lot of courage,
Yes.
and that's where I think, if we get into the bigger picture, I always think of it as like women have gone, over the last 50, 60 years in particular, have gone a very far way down the road from home into the world of work. It's been a long, and it's by far not where, we'd all like it to be. There's still, a disparity in income, or, the pay and childcare, and all kinds of issues and harassment. So, but women have worked very hard to go sort of connecting these two areas. I feel like men are kind of, at the beginning of the road that leads to, from work into the home, head and heart. That work is being done by stay-at-home dads, by guys that are trying to build more sort of equitable homes, and it does put it into context of like, yeah, again, like I said, women have had to have a lot of courage to move into the workplaces, and so we also, it's about stepping out of our comfort zone to say, yeah, maybe there is, I'm getting looked at funny, but like what I'm here for, I know, is I'm here to be a good dad, and
Right.
sometimes that might mean you have to go through. It's uncomfortable. I mean, I stayed home for the first year and a half. We split the care with my daughter, and I went through all the stuff. But I think at the core, if you're really there for the right reason for your kid, then it that gets,
Well,
and like you said, consistent.
And I think too, like the realization that the schools need to make, that there's been a shift in parenting and how, shift in family lifestyles and
What is a family?
Well, that, and even too, just like the fact that it's not always, mom who is going to be the primary in different situations. And, just the idea that it doesn't matter which parent walks through that door, it should be an equal treatment of like, okay, like that person is here for a specific reason type of thing. And it really shouldn't be like odd or, oh, dad's here, this is so great that you're involved, like, yeah. And it's like, I'm just a parent just like any other person here. And so I think that's one of the bigger like issues, is this idea that dad doesn't need to be put on a pedestal. Dad needs to be seen as an equal parent, and in doing so, like, that is going to be what looks very welcoming to other dads that have the ability, have the time, or even they carve the time out to do it. And I think that's the other thing. There are lots of dads who are willing to carve the time out, but what they don't want to do is carve the time out and then get poo-pooed on it for being there at the school when they are, seeing it as quality time, but the school is having a hard time with accepting the fact that they're there. So
well, that'd be a good problem. If we have more of that problem, that'd be good, because I think often that's one of the things guys, cite as parents cite, is one of the issues is time. And I agree. I think a lot, especially now in a post-COVID world, like guys can carve out the time. Women have been doing it, single moms have been doing it. Like, you can do it. And I agree. It would be great if it were welcoming, but at the very least accepted that you want to get involved. And again, I think that's where we as dads have to step out of our comfort zone. And I just think there's so many guys out there that are with young kids are like, because there's a shift.
Yeah.
There's,
Oh, yeah.
and that's largely, the work that you all do and have been doing for a long time it's about normalizing these roles and the shifting roles. And I just think we're at a sort of a good tipping point where, it's time that my hope is we don't have to set, the word parent could mean both of those, both a mom, a dad, an uncle, but right now it's still not as inclusive a term in schools in particular as we need it to be. So we have to name it as dad, father figure, community of dads, because that's also what gets, guys, I think, out, which when I first started doing this, schools would be like, well, our dads don't show up. I'm like, I know, that's why I'm calling the talk what I'm calling it.
Right.
It speaks directly to them because they haven't necessarily been invited. So it's like we need the invitations, but we also, need to gently, I won't say crash party, but like we need to show up and step up in those ways. Yeah.
Well, hey, John, appreciate you coming on the show today, talking with us. This definitely hits, right in the ballpark with with all of the dads a part of the organization, and all of and especially the parents that are just listening too, that we've got on the show and whatnot. So I really appreciate you coming on. I'll make sure that in the show notes there's a way for people to get connected with you and also be able to find Fathering Together. I did pull up the documentary you mentioned as well, so I'll make sure that link gets put in there as well so folks can see that. But
cool.
Thank you so much for just spending some time with us and sharing about just what you and Fathering Together are working on for dads. And thank you so much. We appreciate it. You have a good one.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you both. It's been a pleasure. Good to see you both. I just figured it out. You're Wrigley Field. That's where you are.
Yes.
We're just missing the ivy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. The ivy's in front. That's right. It's in front. And by the way, I should say moms can start this stuff too. And most of the times I get called from schools, it's from moms. So I encourage moms to get the
dads involved.
Get them involved.
We're going to do. My husband needs to be involved. Yes, he does.
Whatever it takes.
Right.
Whatever it takes.
Oh,
thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely. Have a good one.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.